Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. O. Selvan's dramatic rebellion last night has not only changed the complexion of Tamil politics, but increased the uncertainty and the prevailing tension. At the moment, it's true to say we simply don't know what might happen. Rarely, if ever, has Indian politics looked so unpredictable. Tonight, we examine the governor's behavior and his options, O. Selvan's behavior and his justification, Shashikala's behavior and her support. My guests are our former South India Bureau Chief T.S. Sudhir, Shashikala's supporter C. Rajashekharan, former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi, former Attorney General and Solicitor General Soli Sorabji, and one of the best-known Supreme Court lawyers, C. R.M.S. Sundaram. Mr. R.M.S. Sundaram, let's start with the unprecedented, if not constitutionally anomalous situation in Tamil Nadu this evening. The Chief Minister has resigned and his resignation was accepted 3 full days ago. Thereafter, the ruling party has elected a new leader and she hasn't been sworn in. Clearly, the governor is deliberately delaying matters. My question is, does he have a right to do this?
Karan, in my opinion, the governor's conduct in this matter is most unbecoming of the office that he holds. It is unbelievable that a governor whose role should really be to have a stable government is creating a situation. All these things have arisen. If on day one he had accepted that all the MLAs unanimously, including Mr. Selvam, had elected Sasikala as the leader and had done his constitutional function, she having no other disability or ineligibility under the constitution, to have sworn her in, all this may never have arisen. He has created a situation by his sheer inaction, by allowing a situation to come up, fomenting all this. And his role is to create a stable government, not to create an instability. His role is to create a constitutionally supportable government, not create a constitutional crisis. And what makes matters worse is that today, when Tamil Nadu is in the middle of all this, he's sitting in Bombay doing what? I mean, if you have a charge in 2 or 3 states, the least I would expect is the state where there is a situation going on at least requires your presence. I do not know whether to compare him to a Roman emperor who fiddled while Rome burnt, or whether, rushing off a ship which is in turmoil. But whatever it is, he had no business not to be in Chennai. Whatever may be his action, as a governor of Tamil Nadu, with the present crisis, he has a far greater responsibility to be in Tamil Nadu than to be anywhere else.
Sorry, sir.
I would love to know what his pressing programs were for the last 2 days.
Well, actually, I believe this evening he's attending a convocation at a university in Mumbai where he is chancellor, just to answer that specific question. Sorry, Sorabji, your view is almost the opposite of the one you've heard from R.M.S. Sundaram. You take the view there is nothing constitutionally improper with the governor deferring swearing in Shashikala as long as he doesn't decline to do so altogether. But the question is, how long can he defer the swearing in? After all, there's no guarantee the Supreme Court verdict will be delivered for sure next week. What happens if it doesn't come out for another 10 days?
Well, Karan, one thing, in normal course, governor should have accepted it, and there would be no problem. Suppose there was no judgment on corruption against Sasikala, then he would have certainly sworn it in. But what he has done is he has not declined. Maybe he can't decline, he has deferred. Why? Because the Supreme Court judgment will be available latest by Monday, if not on Friday, by Monday.
Forgive me.
And suppose
Mr. Sorabji, can I interrupt you there?
Shashikala,
with what guarantee of certainty do you say the Supreme Court judgment will be available latest by Monday, if not Friday? The Supreme Court, in a very general way, gave assurance that it will be out next week. Next week could be Friday of next week, which is 9 days away from today. Now, are we going to defer the swearing in for 9 more days?
No, it could. But it could be now. Friday is when, Karan? Day after tomorrow. So there's a question of defining it more. Day after tomorrow, I just took the other view, if not Friday, Monday. So I think if we deferred it, it is for the reason to avoid it. Look at the anomalous consequences that follow. Suppose the Supreme Court holds that Shashikala is guilty of corruption. Suppose it's possible. Then what happens? then she has to step down, she can't continue. And then again the whole process starts again. So I think, really speaking, if he had really declined, he couldn't have. But if he has deferred and deferred for a short period, I don't think he has done anything constitutionally wrong. Now, I don't attach much importance whether he should be in Bombay or in Tamil Nadu. It's a question of where he exercises his functions.
T.S. Sudhir, you've written a piece yesterday for firstpost.com where you argued that the governor is deliberately delaying matters under instructions given perhaps subtly and quietly by the central government in Delhi. But today in an interview to this channel, Home Minister Rajnath Singh denied there were any such instructions, and he secondly denied that he had any one-to-one meeting with the governor when the governor was in Delhi. He said they only met amongst hundreds of other people at Prakash Javadeka's son's reception. So how confident are you that in fact the governor is acting at the behest of the central government rather than in terms of his own understanding of the situation without pressure being put from Delhi?
Well, I have from very reliable sources, Karan, that the Union Home Minister Rajnath Singh and Vidyasagar Rao had a one-on-one conversation between 7 and 8 p.m. on Sunday evening in Delhi. Or was it Monday evening? The day Prakash Javadeka's son's wedding reception was there, that was Monday evening. So there was this conversation that definitely took place, and most believe that Vidyasagar Rao was briefed about what the centre wanted him to do. What is most surprising and extremely ironic is that what Shashikala and the AIADMK camp are saying, that he has not even bothered to reply to the letter which had been sent to the Raj Bhavan in Maharashtra about the staking claim for forming the next government here in Tamil Nadu with Shashikala as Chief Minister. So that's what begs the question whether all this is playing to some kind of a script. And then Paneerselvam going and revolting against the leadership of Shashikala and the AIADMK. It seems to suggest that someone else is actually pulling the strings. Never before, as Mr. Ariman Sundaram was pointing out, has a governor shown so much of reluctance to come to a capital city of a state where he holds additional charge, especially when there is so much of political turmoil taking place. Sunday was when the legislators of the AIADMK elected Shashikala as their new legislature party leader. Today is Wednesday. It's been 3 days since then. There is no news of when he will come. Only now, just about 10 minutes back, we have got news that he could be coming tomorrow afternoon. But again, there is absolutely no news of whether he will be swearing in. The swearing in ceremony could take place either tomorrow, which is an auspicious day according to the AIADMK party, or it could take place anytime on Friday. So it would seem to suggest, given the kind of revolt by Paneerselvam, that someone else is actually pulling the strings and someone is writing the script as to what should happen here in Chennai.
And for the sake of the audience, I'll point out, could be coming tomorrow is no guarantee or certainty that he will come tomorrow. In the last 3 days, we've often had reports that he could be coming and he didn't turn up at all. This may be one of those, once again, another could be coming where he doesn't materialize. Mr. Qureshi, whilst the governor defers or drags his feet, there's clearly a tug of war underway between Shashikala and Paneerselvam to see who can win a majority of the MLAs. By deferring matters repeatedly, if not continually, isn't the governor encouraging or at least permitting this battle over MLAs? And it may not be long before this actually turns into horse trading.
The current avoid making any political statement, but surely there seems to be something more than meets the eye. My stand has been that even if we don't like the candidate who has been elected by these MLAs, the governor has no option, because that is a provision of the law. The law of the land is that anybody can be elected by the ruling party to become the chief minister or prime minister for that matter, and has to contest an election within 6 months. And what happens after 6 months, of course, is to be seen. But till then, it cannot be denied. So why is he delaying it? And I would rather not comment on it.
Mr. Qureshi, what about my point?
Some background which we are
what
not
about
aware
my point, Mr. Qureshi, that by delaying matters, the governor is permitting, perhaps even encouraging, some form of battle over MLAs, which could lead to horse trading? These things happen fairly often in India, and I would imagine the first duty of a governor is to ensure it doesn't, rather than encourage and permit it to happen.
Yes, of course, horse trading is likely to happen. It may be happening already. Whether the governor is doing it deliberately or not, that's a question to be seen. But that seems to be the result, all right. That seems to be happening. Already the way, it's a very typical story, when MLAs used to be taken on tours from Haryana to Goa and they will be confined for 1 month, 2 months so that they cannot be poached. It seems to be the same story repeating itself.
Absolutely. Soli Sorabji, you upheld the right of the governor to defer and delay. But if that ends up encouraging or at least permitting MLAs to be exchanged, to be fought over, perhaps even horse trading, wouldn't that place the governor's behavior in a different light?
Well, Karan, what I mean to say is, if you look at it, how long can he defer? He can't defer longer than the Supreme Court judgment. And I would like to emphasize this particular feature, namely, the very likelihood of Supreme Court delivering the judgment latest by Monday. And that would change the whole scene.
Well, no, forgive me,
because if the Supreme Court holds that Shashikala is guilty of
I'm interrupting again because you seem to be convinced that the Supreme Court will not delay beyond Monday. But actually, all the Supreme Court said was that the fact the verdict would be... No, let me finish, Mr. Sorabji, because this is important. All the Supreme Court said is that the verdict will be next week. Next week stretches from Monday, the 13th, all the way through to Friday, the 18th. Yes, that's right. So what happens if the verdict isn't till Friday, the 18th? That is 9 days away from today.
But Karan, what makes you think it won't be delivered on Monday?
Nothing, except we have no idea when it will be. The Supreme Court hasn't given a date.
That?
You're assuming Monday, but on what basis I don't understand.
No, you are assuming it won't be on Monday.
Because the Supreme Court hasn't given a date.
The Supreme Court knows the urgency of the matter.
No, but Mr. Sorabji, all the Supreme Court has said is it will be next week.
No, it hasn't.
Next week is a 5-day period. It can be from Monday through to Friday of next week. And what I'm saying is, if it happens to be on Friday of next week, that is 9 days away.
I know that's Yes, that is true, Karan. That's a bit of a problem. I agree with you. But the way I see it is, I expect the Supreme Court to give it as soon as possible. I may be wrong in my expectation, but I think it won't be given. It will be given not later than next Monday.
All right, let's hope you're correct, because otherwise this anomalous situation will stretch on painfully
until that time
and undemocratically. Mr. Arvind Sundaram, in the meantime, it's been widely reported that Shashikala intends to fly the MLAs to Delhi and very possibly come herself and parade them in front of the president. And that was in fact something that NTR did way back in the 1980s. If that happens, and the president sees that quite clearly she has something like 130 or 131 out of the parties, 134 MLAs there supporting her and willing to travel to Delhi to prove the point, then will the president be required to intervene? Because this will be clear proof, and as head of state, maybe he will be required to give some instruction to the governor at that point.
Without a doubt, Karan, the governor is the representative of the president in the state. The governor is the part of the executive, and he is really the representative of the president. While so, certainly, the president could advise the governor, and I use the word advise in that it's a kind of advice which cannot be rejected, but will have to be accepted, to take immediate action. And this is where I'm finding the whole thing a bit of a problem. Don't forget that Sasikala has been acquitted. Today there's not even a charge against her. It just so happens that an appeal against acquittal is pending. They did not refuse to swear in Madam Jayalalitha only because an appeal had been filed and was pending. The fact is, an appeal is there, the case has been heard, and if in fact the judgment is delivered and results in disqualifying her, law will take its course. But it's the first time in history that I've heard that there's a possibility of a superior court reversing an acquittal of a lower court, and since that possibility is there, and since that judgment is coming up, we will not abide by the constitutional mandate of having to swear in the leader of the majority party. I think it's the first time I'm hearing such an excuse being trotted out, because don't forget, this is not an appeal against conviction, it is an appeal against acquittal. As on date, she is not guilty. And we are really saying, let's wait until the appellate court decides whether she is guilty or not. In which case, let's rewrite the Representation of People's Act and say wherever an appeal is pending, until their judgment comes, a person should not be sworn in.
Okay.
Because if the judgment comes against her, then she has to step down, and then we'll have to appoint somebody else. I think it really, for me, is very anomalous.
You know, let me ask you one more question, Soni Sarabji, before I go to T.S. Sudhir, C. Rajashekhar and Mr. Qureshi. It's quite possible that tomorrow Shashikala will be in Delhi. She will parade 130 or 131 out of the party's 134 MLAs in front of the president. The president will then see that she has a clear majority, not just of the party, but within the assembly as well. Presumably, he will then be honor bound to give some sort of instruction to the governor, but that instruction will put him, I believe, in conflict with the instructions the Home Minister and the government themselves have been giving the governor. Then what happens? The president will be in a very invidious, if not awkward situation, where he'll be required to give advice to the governor, which will contradict the advice the government and the Home Minister are giving. Isn't that a very unfortunate situation that could develop?
Yes, yes, Karan, but there are a number of, I don't think parading there before the president has any meaning. The majority has to be proved on the floor test of in the House. And
Mr. Sarabji, you're forgetting what happened in 1980s when NTR was thrown out on the grounds that he had lost his majority by the Congress government of the day, and he flew his MLAs to Delhi, proved on the forecourt of Rashtrapati Bhavan that he had it, and immediately the floor test was granted and the dismissal was reversed. Much the same could follow this time round, but if it does, it will put the president at odds with what Sudhir says the Home Minister has been saying to the governor. And I'm saying that would be a very awkward situation, both for the Modi government and for the president.
Yes, but you're assuming the Home Minister has been saying to the governor, though he has denied, but you think his denial is not correct?
It's unlikely that a governor would delay swearing in a person with a clear majority for 3 days on his own initiative. Governors in India tend to walk and tread carefully, not take such huge initiatives. But you may be right. Let me bring in the others. Sudhir, at the moment, despite the flack you get claims made by Paneerselvam himself and by his supporters, people like Mr. Pandyan as well as Mr. Maitreyan, that MLAs in their hearts are with him. The truth is, physically, they were clearly there both last night and this morning with Shashikala. So would I be right in saying that the only real hope that Mr. Paneerselvam has that the MLAs will also physically be with him as opposed to just sentimentally in their hearts is if that appeal goes against her, if she gets convicted, if she then ends up in jail and can't become Chief Minister, then no doubt they'll flock to him. But if that acquittal is upheld, he'll be sunk.
Absolutely. In fact, as things stand now, he has the support of only 3 MLAs in the AIDMK legislature party, and that includes himself. So in that sense, apart from a Rajya Sabha member flocking to him, there aren't any MLAs or MPs who are actually making a beeline to the Paneerselvam camp at this point in time. There are some disgruntled people who have had problems with Shashikala in the past who are by his side. But yes, he is maintaining that if the verdict goes against Shashikala, and that's their big hope, the entire AIDMK legislature party could actually start looking at him. We could see a different kind of a migratory season, as it were, where the AIDMK legislators think that, okay, the winnability factor could now be with O. Paneerselvam instead of Shashikala. So that's their big hope. Just to make a small point also about the reason why the governor may also be delaying this entire thing is because they are also looking at what happened in 2001 when Jayalalitha was convicted. Her nomination papers were rejected and she was sworn in, but subsequently the Supreme Court had overturned it. That's one of the concerns that the governor has, and I have it from the horse's mouth, that he does not want to go down the same way as Governor Fatima Bibi did, because she had been reprimanded by the Supreme Court at that time in 2001. So that's also one of the concerns that Governor Vidyasagar Rao has.
Except, Sudhir, the big difference is in 2001, Jayalalitha actually was convicted, debarred because of that conviction for contesting the election, and despite that sworn in as Chief Minister. This time round, the lady concerned, Shashikala is acquitted. She's not debarred from standing for elections. So
Yes, it's a big difference. It's a big difference which Governor Rao seemed to be ignoring at this point in time, because this is what was specifically told to me by sources in Raj Bhavan, that he has been given legal advice that this situation is pretty similar to the one in 2001.
in which case the legal advice could questionably be considered dubious, because the two cases are not really parallel at all. But let me bring you in, Mr. Rajshekharan. Would you accept that there is a sword of Damocles hanging over Shashikala's head? And if it falls because the acquittal is overturned and she is convicted, it will guillotine her political ambitions completely, instantaneously, in fact. And that is the huge gamble she is taking. And is she insisting upon being sworn in because she, perhaps for some reason I don't understand, believes that as Chief Minister she would be more secure and less likely to be convicted than if she wasn't Chief Minister? In other words, is she seeking this job as some sort of insurance? Mistakenly, perhaps.
Karan, see, this matter is pending before the Honorable Supreme Court, and matter is sub judice. I cannot speculate on what the Honorable Supreme Court is going to pass a judgment in a very important case.
I'm not asking you to speculate about what the Supreme Court will do. I'm asking you to try and explain why she is insisting on being sworn in when a sword of Damocles is hanging. And my question was, does she want to be sworn in as a sort of insurance policy? Mistakenly, perhaps, but is that what's in her mind?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. It is only the creation of the opposition and the rebellion, Mr. O. Pannirselvam, because there is no fear of any barring from becoming the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. She has got the full majority of 132 MLAs. As on this moment, she has got the support of 132 MLAs, and they are all with her. The senior leaders like Sengoten, all the seniors are with her, and the party is with her. So in spite of all this, I really don't understand why the Governor of Tamil Nadu is evading, because such a big state, 234 assembly constituencies, Tamil Nadu has not got an independent governor to be stationed here in spite of so much of crisis. Okay. The governor is evading the phone calls from the Chief Minister's office, the Chief Secretary's office. The letter, thrice the letter has been sent for request to the governor to come down to Chennai and administer the oath, but he is not responding. I really have my strong doubts. He has been asked to do that, or by whom he has been instructed. All these doubts are in the minds of the people of Tamil Nadu. Why the people of Tamil Nadu should suffer? Because of the governor's attitude and some vested interest acting from Delhi.
All right,
it is strongly, we are worried about this.
Let me bring in the former Chief Election Commissioner at this point. I'm going to go back, Mr. Qureshi, to what might happen tomorrow when Shashikala comes with 130, 131 out of 134 MLAs and parades them in front of President Mukherjee. Give me your sense of what can the president do when he sees this majority. How can he not make a public statement, or at least give advice privately to the governor that there is a clear majority here, you have to act? How can he avoid or evade doing that?
I think Mr. Surabji answered that question very clearly, that President cannot do anything except advise the governor to call for the assembly session, because the only test is a floor test, which has been repeatedly held by the Supreme Court. There is no other way. Otherwise, 134 and all that, to my mind, is a speculative number. 4 days ago, even Mr. Pannirselvam was one of them. So who secretly is on which side, we really don't know, and we will know only on the floor of the House.
But you've actually put your finger on the problem. If the only thing the president can do is to advise the governor to call a floor test, and to do so presumably as quickly as possible, that advice would supposedly be contrary to what we are told Rajnath Singh is advising the governor, because Sudhir is absolutely convinced that Rajnath Singh had a private meeting with the governor when he was in Delhi and actually advised him to go slow. And therefore, if this situation emerges, as I'm saying, the president will be giving advice contrary to what the Home Minister is giving. Isn't that an awkward situation?
It indeed is, but then President also cannot keep quiet. Absolutely. When so many are paraded before him, he'll have to say something, and most probably it will be that it should be on the floor of the House.
And that should be pause for thought for Mr. Rajnath Singh. If he is giving advice, Sudhir says to the governor, hold it up. And therefore, we have a piquant, awkward situation developing. I can't see what more we can say about that. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to take up a second, possibly equally piquant situation that's emerging, and that is to do with Mr. Paneerselvam's statement that he will withdraw his resignation. First to you, Mr. Arimasundaram, would you agree that the problem is that the governor has already accepted Paneerselvam's resignation? Can you withdraw a resignation that's been accepted, or does the governor have the power to reverse his own decision to accept?
Not at all. In fact, like I mentioned earlier, not today but the other day, that the unfortunate situation here is that the governor, if he wanted to defer it, ought not to have accepted the resignation with such alacrity and then created a situation of a vacuum. That was something which was totally unexplainable. I mean, it's completely inexplicable as to why you accept a resignation quickly and then you say, oh, now I'm not so sure about filling somebody else there. And that is completely unconstitutional to my mind, and it goes against the fundamental concept of creating a stability in government. And I think once it's been accepted, if Mr. Paneerselvam now wants to lay a claim to be Chief Minister, he would have to convince the governor that he has the support of the majority, especially since it is public knowledge that Shashikala has the support of the majority MLAs, including on that given date, Mr. Paneerselvam himself. And in which case, if she has 131 MLAs, which is publicly known, and Mr. Paneerselvam says, now I'm having a rethink, I would like to be Chief Minister, it's not a simple thing of saying, I want to withdraw a resignation already accepted. He'll have to show that he has the support of the majority. And that is why I'm saying the current situation is terrible because of one reason. By this inactivity, you are creating, absolutely creating the situation of a complete turmoil. Whereas if on day one when 136 said yes, you could have sworn her in as Chief Minister. If after that the party wants to change the Chief Minister, it's always open to them to do so. Equally, if after that the Supreme Court verdict went against her, she would automatically have to lay down office and they'd have to come up with another choice of Chief Minister. But creating this kind of situation, you're just breeding a ground to create a turmoil, which is the exact opposite of a governor's role. The governor should do anything but create a constitutional crisis, which is what he seems to be doing.
Let me bring you in on this one, Sori Sorabji. Can it not be argued that if the governor reverses his own decision to accept Paneerselvam's resignation, he'll end up taking sides between Shashikala and Paneerselvam in the struggle that's going on between them? And that would be tantamount to the governor playing a political role. So surely decorum and the duties and responsibilities of the governor's office means, regardless of what Mr. Paneerselvam may say to him, sir, I've changed my mind, I want to withdraw my resignation, the governor will have to say, sorry, I accepted it, and that is the end of the matter.
No, I agree. I agree with Sundaram. Once you tender a resignation and it's accepted, you can't withdraw it. It can't be done. But Karan, let me sum up in a sentence. The governor cannot decline. He has not declined. He has deferred it, and he has not deferred for eternity. He has deferred it for a very short time.
Well, we don't know how short that time is.
He has a Supreme Court judgment.
Mr. Sorabji, you're forgetting that a moment ago you agreed with me that time could be as much as 9 more days. That's not a short time. That's not a short time. 9 more days would prolong the agony and the constitutional
but won't be.
Uncertainty. Well, how do you know it won't be? But how do you know it won't be if you're admitting it could be? How can you say it won't be? Because neither you nor I know when the Supreme Court will actually deliver that judgment. Well, that's the problem. Let me bring in Mr. Qureshi and put two things to you. Mr. Qureshi, you've heard Paneerselvam say that he was forced to resign. In other words, this wasn't voluntary. As a former Chief Election Commissioner, does that change matters and therefore raise questions about the validity of the resignation? And does that provide some sort of grounds for the governor to permit a withdrawal, which otherwise would be wrong?
In my opinion, the governor does not have the power to review his own decision. Once given, and that was 3 days ago, the decision is now absolute. I tried to check with the legal department of Election Commission whether it had happened ever in the past. There was no such incident. Then I tried to recall some IAS officers who had resigned and whose resignation was taken back on compassionate ground. But that is because the president has the power to review his own decisions. But in this case, the governor doesn't have any power. Even if he wants to help, I don't think he will be able to take back the resignation.
One other question to you, Mr. Qureshi. Today, the Election Commission has also raised questions about Shashikala's appointment as General Secretary. First, it said that no rules were followed to select her as temporary General Secretary. And then it's also said that the AIA-DMK doesn't actually have an interim or temporary General Secretary's post. And they've reportedly asked for a copy of the resolution whereby all of this happened, as well as all other details. Does that suggest that there are also credible and critical question marks about the post that Shashikala believes she holds? And does that create question marks about her ability to give instructions to her party as General Secretary?
I don't think Election Commission acts in such a hurry and such a haste in such cases. There are organizations, their president, their general secretaries, they are not appointed for days and months, and we keep on after them that please hold elections. I don't think it's such an urgent thing which is going to make any material difference that the Election Commission wants an answer immediately.
All right, so it's just a question the Election Commission has asked, not something they want urgent answers to. Have I understood you correctly, Mr. Qureshi?
Yes, yes. I don't think this is a question which requires an urgent answer.
Let's then take a break at that point and come back and address a piquant situation that could have a unique but not unprecedented solution. We have two people claiming they have a majority not just of their own party support but also of the assembly in Tamil Nadu. This has happened before. It happened in 1998 in UP when both Kalyan Singh and Jagdambika Pal claimed that they had support. The matter went first to the Allahabad High Court and then to the Supreme Court, and eventually something called a composite floor test was ordered by the Supreme Court. Is that a precedent that could sort out the turmoil and mess in Tamil Nadu? We'll be back in a moment's time to ask, is that what, in fact, the governor should consider doing? See you in a moment's time. Mr. R.M.S. Sundaram, at the moment in Tamil Nadu, you have two politicians who claim they have majority support in the assembly. Now, when something similar happened in UP in 1998, and the two politicians at the time, I believe, were Kalyan Singh and Jagdambika Pal, the courts ordered what's called a composite floor test. It was a unique thing. It had never happened before, but the precedent has been established. Should the Tamil Nadu governor follow that precedent in Chennai?
Not at all, Karan, because I think that is, if at all, to be followed, and I have my grave doubts whether that ought to ever be followed again. Where if at all it is to be followed, it should be at the very last possible alternative. You see, here is a case where he's actually got 136 MLAs who elected a leader. Today, it is a possibility that some of them come out of it. But if there are still 130 MLAs who say this is the leader we want, I don't think it requires a composite floor test. All it requires is that the governor then satisfies himself that there are 30 MLAs or 34 MLAs and appoints that person the chief minister. And if he has any doubts, he can always ask the chief minister to have a floor test and prove the majority within a given period of time. And that would be the normal way to deal with the matter. Apart from Mr. Paneerselvam's statements, we don't see anything. But of course, if the governor keeps delaying it, he may actually encourage a situation where you can create more turmoil and have a constitutional breakdown. And that's what the governor's actions seem to push forward to. And that's why I'm saying I'm afraid this is one situation where I feel the governor, in this case, is acting against the Constitution and not to subserve the Constitution. And it's very disappointing.
Mr. Sarabji, let me put that same question to you as well, and let me make a preamble to it by saying this, that although physically the MLAs are with Shashikala, Mr. Paneerselvam, as well as his supporters like Mr. Maitriyan and Mr. Panjan, keep insisting that in their hearts and in their sentiment, they're actually with Paneerselvam. That being the case, should the governor adopt the UP precedent and order a composite floor test? Mr. Sarabji, did you hear me?
Sorry, Karan, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Shall I repeat the question? I'm saying the problem is that although physically the MLAs are with Shashikala, Mr. Paneerselvam, as well as his supporters, Mr. Maitrian and Mr. Pandyan, insist that in their heart and in their sentiment, they're actually with Mr. Paneerselvam. That being the case, should the Tamil Nadu governor use the UP precedent of a composite floor test?
Well, that precedent, I agree with Sundaram. I'm not very happy about that precedent. But Karan, when I say it's likely we give a Supreme Court judgment, likely to be given on Monday, no Supreme Court judges told me. But appearing in the Supreme Court, I know the pulse of the Supreme Court. I'm sure Sundaram also thinks the Supreme Court will give the judgment as soon as possible. And we know the pulse much better than an anchor in the air-conditioned room. So my whole thing is just wait till the judgment comes. And don't assume judgment won't come till eternity.
Well, not eternity, but you're assuming that it will come on Monday. And remember, the Supreme Court has actually also said it's almost finished. In other words, it's not as yet a fully finished judgment. When they said that it will happen next week, they added it's almost finished, which means there is still work to be done. So we can't with any assurance say it will happen on Monday, not necessarily the Friday that follows Monday, which is 9 days away from today. But let's not quarrel on that. We've had that dispute between us several times. Let me bring in Mr. Qureshi. Mr. Qureshi,
It's almost finished.
Mr. Qureshi, is this particular Tamil Nadu governor creating such question marks and doubts about his behavior that in fact he's becoming a political football, i.e. one that the opposition in the shape of Congress will try and kick to embarrass the government in Delhi, and another in the hands of, say, people who bring PILs and complain about his behavior to the court?
Karan, I would rather not comment on the behavior of the governor. All I said was that surely there is something more than we can see, but then it is not for me to comment. But my point would be that even if she has to be sworn in now and thrown out the next day, so be it. It has happened in the past. Once in UP we had a one-day chief minister. Once we had Mr. Chautala who was appointed just for a day, and then because of hue and cry he was removed. So it keeps happening, and therefore delaying it unnecessarily, I don't think it's really necessary.
What is the mood as regards the governor around you there in Chennai and the rest of Tamil Nadu, Sudhir? Are questions being asked that are awkward and embarrassing about his behavior and the delay? You heard Mr. Rajshekharan raise critical questions, but then he is, of course, a supporter of Shashikala. What are average independent-minded people saying?
Well, the average independent-minded, the common man on the street, and of course the voices on social media, there is a huge amount of antipathy, strangely, towards Shashikala, and therefore they believe that the governor is right in a way to delay the entire process by a week. The counter question that is asked is, what is the tearing hurry for Shashikala to be sworn in right at this point in time? Why can't she wait for a week? But at the same time, there is of course also the understanding that the governor cannot actually put a spanner in the works when the legislature party has elected someone to the best of their in the best of their wisdom that this person should be heading the legislature party and therefore should be sworn in as chief minister. So they do understand that a certain level of politics is being played. The AIDMK of course does not want to attack the governor's office directly because they do realize that that would put them in an embarrassing and a piquant kind of a situation and also set up some kind of a confrontation with the centre. So that's not a path they want to go on, which is why the attack is on the DMK, which is a convenient posture to take. But at this point in time, the common man on the street of course does understand that the situation in Tamil Nadu is one of political turmoil, which is why there is a lot of anxiety as to why the governor is so reluctant to even make that air trip from Mumbai to Chennai, which should not take more than 1.5 hours. He has steadfastly stayed away from it. He was spending time in Ooty, but he refused to come to Chennai.
Very quickly, Mr. Rajshekharan, and you have only 30 seconds to answer this. How does your party intend to pursue this problem that you have with the governor? Will you simply grit your teeth and bear it because you don't want to get into a bigger problem with the centre, or do you intend to go public and raise serious questions about the way the governor is delaying matters? A quick answer, please.
See, the governor's behavior is undemocratic. It is against the wish of the people who had elected the ADMK party, which has got the mandate till 2021. The people of Tamil Nadu Of course, there are some dissent in the social media, but social media doesn't rule the state. The administration is come to an halt. The people's
So how do you intend to pursue the matter? That's the question. How do you intend to pursue the matter? Please answer that, because I'm out of time.
See, tomorrow the MPs of ADMK party are meeting sought for an appointment to meet the President of India. The MLAs are here. We are only hoping and wishing, keeping our fingers crossed, the governor at least now takes a wise decision, takes an aircraft from Bombay, lands in Chennai, administers oath to the leader who was selected by the majority MLAs. See, otherwise the next option will be to go to the Honorable Supreme Court and plead before the Honorable Supreme Court against the governor's behavior like this.
You've given me the answer that I was looking for. You're not ruling out the possibility of having to go to the Supreme Court in some sort of petition or appeal against the governor's behavior. You're hoping it won't come to that, but you're not ruling out that you may have to do it. My thanks to all my guests for joining me. We're going to have to leave this there, but clearly this is a situation that we will be looking into and covering repeatedly in the days ahead. For tonight, goodbye, good night.